Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Jets, episode 276. What's going on? Matt O'Leary here with you. We are going to talk some Jets OTAs as well as answer your voicemails this week. And for one of the things that I wanted to get into, really the main topic here in the intro segment before getting into your voicemails, is Aaron Glenn on one of the Jets' biggest weaknesses. And I think if you go around and look at this New York Jets team, it's fair to point out a few different spots that are weak points. For me, I look at the safety room as a potential issue. Some depth on the defensive line might be a problem. I think they're pretty good on the offensive line and at running back, and maybe you're worried about tight end with, they took Mason Taylor, who, to be honest with you, looks very good so far during OTAs, but the depth at that position, all those are fine, and we could spend an episode talking about those weaknesses, but I wanted to talk about the wide receiver 2 spot because it's a very popular complaint from Jet fans, and it's fair. I'm going to be flat out with you. Outside of Garrett Wilson, there's a lot of question marks in this wide receiver room. And at the OTA press conferences yesterday, Aaron Glenn was asked about the wide receiver 2 spot, and I kind of wanted to get into his answer and how he thinks the Jets go about fixing their issues, or I guess, if Garrett Wilson can perform. Let's get into the clip, and then we'll react on the other side.
How critical is it that one of the veteran receivers like Allen Lazard, Josh Reynolds, or Tyler Johnson steps up and becomes like a number 2 target for you? Because I would imagine the defensive coordinator in you thinks Garrett Wilson's going to see a lot of double teams if one of those guys doesn't step up.
Well, listen, all of our guys are going to have to step up. I mean, it doesn't matter which veteran they is. There can be a young guy that can step up. Listen, we have guys that can make plays for us, and that's at every level, every position we have. Running backs, our tight ends, what we just talked about. We have other receivers that's going to make plays. So I'm expecting all of our guys that's going to be here, right, to step up and take the burden off Garrett. Listen, Garrett's going to have his chance of one-on-ones. Is he going to get double? Yeah, he's going to get double. He's a good receiver. But when you do that, that leaves somebody else in a one-on-one situation. And I'll take that with our guys all day.
All right, so there you heard Aaron Glenn's reaction to the question, and a couple things of note. We'll get into the wide receiver 2 portion of it in just a second, but before we do that, I like that he mentioned running backs and tight ends, because I think when looking at the New York Jets offense, and specifically the passing game, you're going to have to see a lot of usage in the passing game with guys like Breece Hall, with guys like Mason Taylor, and a comparison that I think you can make, and maybe a misconception among some fans, is that with the passing game, it's got to be, the wide receiver 1 is first in targets, the wide receiver 2 is second in targets, the wide receiver 3 is third in targets. And, maybe if you look back at like the 2015 Jets, that's a great example. Their passing offense was pretty much exclusively Brandon Marshall was far and away the number 1. Eric Decker was far and away the number 2, and then there was a massive drop-off. The Jets' offense won't really work that way, and I like that Glenn, as the head coach, and you're assuming Tanner Engstrand as the offensive coordinator, are going to mitigate some of their issues at the wide receiver spots by using guys like Breece Hall. There's no reason Breece Hall can't catch 60 to 75 passes this year and be one of the most, one of the highest receiving backs in the NFL. There's no reason Mason Taylor can't come in and catch 50 to 60 balls this year. And then from there, you're probably getting in a spot where you need someone, your quote wide receiver 2, and we'll get to that now, be roughly 4th in targets and receptions for this team. And in my eyes, I think this is Josh Reynolds' job, honestly. That's not to say that someone else can't win it in training camp. I'm not gift wrapping this to Josh Reynolds and say, yep, by far and away, he's the guy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, based on what we've seen so far and based on what I think will happen this summer, I think it'll be Josh Reynolds for a few reasons. One, he's been in this offense before with the Detroit Lions a couple years ago, essentially acted as a wide receiver 2 in 2023 and had a really productive year. He wasn't very good last year in Denver, then gets claimed by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Injuries kind of derail his season a year ago. Assuming health, I think it's a layup that it's Josh Reynolds. And, to me, Reynolds and Lazard are very similar receivers. They're both bigger outside receivers, jump ball, contested catch players who are good blockers. And what I think Reynolds gives you more of than Allen Lazard is I trust Reynolds' hands more than I trust Lazard's by far. And Lazard may or may not be here by the time training camp and the regular season comes. I don't think you can rule out him moving to the Pittsburgh Steelers if that's where Aaron Rodgers ends up. Or at the same time, if they want to keep him around, I could see the Jets going, all right, we'll do one more year with Lazard and then really try to revamp this thing. You have other guys like Arian Smith, who you drafted in the 4th round this year, who's a speedster, and you signed a guy like Johnson, who's been just, bounced around the league a little bit, but a veteran, has done a lot here. They need somebody to step up. Malachi Corley, I'm saying, reluctantly in a way. We haven't seen him yet this offseason because he's dealing with an injury. So I'm not blaming him in particular for his not hearing his name right now because he's hurt. I just, looking at the available options, I think it's likely to be Reynolds. But like Glenn says, there's an opportunity for any of those guys. Xavier Gipson and Malachi Corley included. I or you listening at home might think that they are borderline roster players or guys on the fringe who might end up getting cut, but that doesn't mean that they can't go out and win an opportunity. It's competition in this room to see who that next guy is. And Reynolds and Lazard are more the veterans in that group, but you have youngsters like Xavier Gipson, like Malachi Corley, like Arian Smith, who, hey, there is no defined guy right now who is number 2. Go out there and prove it. So it is likely to be an issue, and I am scared to death at the thought of what if Garrett Wilson rolls an ankle and misses 3 games, because I don't know what the heck their plan is going to be at that point. I guess cross that bridge when you get there, but they're going to try to mitigate it with their tight end and running back usage in the passing game, plus hopefully one of these receivers stepping up. I think it's going to be Josh Reynolds, but you let me know who you think it's going to be. Let's get into your voicemails on the program today. We get started with Jake from Jersey, who wants to get in on the Justin Fields conversation.
Hey, what's up, Matt? Jake from Jersey. Just watching your Just Jets episode. It's Wednesday right now. I always do this. I call in on Wednesday, and something always happens, but whatever. Still calling in today. Regardless, I just want to say, I feel like everyone's putting such a, I don't want to say a low ceiling on Justin Fields, because in the NFL he hasn't proved much at all. But he was like an elite passer in college. I just, there is a chance that he does go nuclear this season. That can happen. And I'm not saying you're putting that low ceiling on that. You're just being realistic with your expectations. I'm not being realistic. I'm being, I'm scared. It's that season again, man. It's that time of the year. I'm starting to get way over optimistic. It happens every single year. They suck me back in a couple One Jets Drives episodes, and here I am, But no, really, what does the season look like if he has a 35-plus passing TD season? Don't even sprinkle in the rushing TD. Just strictly like his, his second season in college, 41 pass TDs. What if he has 30, 35-plus passing touchdowns? I'm sure Garrett Wilson will be super pumped. It could be the perfect combo. Great O-line, should have a pretty good defense, great running game with him rushing, and then pretty solid receiving core. I'm not going to say a great receiving core. Garrett Wilson, great. One decent tight end right now. We'll say was the one we drafted, and then Rucker, maybe resurrection year, play with him in college. I'm just saying, the stars maybe are aligning. Am I being too optimistic? I think so. But who knows, man? But anyway, just want to know, what do you think the season looks like if Justin Fields, throws for 32 passing touchdowns? That's all I want to know, man. Go Jets.
That is a very optimistic outlook on, one, the Jets in general, but two, more specifically with Justin Fields. And while you were talking, I was pulling it up. His first year at Ohio State, the 2019 season, started 14 games, 3,200 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, 3 picks, 181.4 rating. He finished third in the Heisman voting that year. He also added 484 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns on the ground. I did think that he would be a better passer coming from college to the NFL than he has. Honestly, I thought Trey Lance would be, and he's worse, obviously, unfortunately, for the San Francisco 49ers, and I guess Dallas Cowboys too, technically. But I thought Trey Lance making the jump from college to the NFL would be more the style that Justin Fields' NFL career has been so far. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. It makes sense in my head, but and I thought Justin Fields would be a better passer. I thought he would be more similar to like a Dak Prescott, like early career Dak Prescott, where he was good, took care of the football, and had some rushing upside. And then clearly in the NFL level, he's been just significantly much more of a rusher than he has been a thrower. It's not impossible. I think he desperately needs to improve getting the ball out quicker. There were reports from OTAs that he's been late throughout his NFL career. I think that's been one of his biggest things that have held him back, holding on to the ball too long and being late on reads, which is where he needs to improve. But let's play the game. If he does, well, then we're not talking about the Jets winning 6 to 8 games. We're talking about the Jets winning 8, 9, 10 games with that kind of quarterback play and ending the playoff drought. So for the Jets' sake, I hope it happens. I'm not betting on that to happen, but it would be tremendous for this franchise because it would mean that they, one, end the playoff drought, and two, found their franchise quarterback. Let's go to Israel in Staten Island, who wants to talk some Sauce Gardner.
Hi, Matt. It's Israel from Staten Island. Just wanted to know, quick thing, how come everyone is so in favor of giving Sauce an extension after a down year? If you pay him an extension now, after he's proved that he can have a down year, he'll get, everyone's talking about a top 3 cornerback money. He doesn't deserve this money as of right now. Let him prove it for another year before you pay him. He wants to be a Jet anyways. He's not going anywhere else. Okay? And thank you so much. I love the show.
Thank you for the call. I think the issue is, and I think you're putting a lot of stock in what happened last year. And I don't want to use the word ignoring, but maybe diminishing what we saw the first 2 years. He was a first-team All-Pro his first 2 years in the league. And this past year, he took a step back. I'm not going to say that he was the same guy that he was his first 2 years. I think he was the number 1 or number 2 corner in the NFL at that point. He still played, in my opinion, as a top 10 corner in the NFL. And if you wait, you run the risk of having to pay even more money than originally anticipated. So this offseason, the corner market completely exploded. Where guys like, Pat Surtain a couple years ago signed for $24 million. That was, the next highest AAV. But you had like Jair Alexander at $21 million a year, Denzel Ward $20 million, AJ Terrell $20.25 million. J.C. Horn gets $25 million this offseason, and J.C. Horn is not at the caliber of corner that Sauce Gardner is. And then Derek Stingley gets $30 million a year. So you go from 20 all the way up to like 24 for maybe the best corner in the NFL at the time, to now raise that by $6 million, 30. So if you wait another year, you run the risk of that blowing up even more. That's kind of the defense of paying someone now, and you're banking on him being closer to the guy that he was his first 2 years than he was in his third year. If we're looking at his 3-year career, this past year is the outlier. not the norm. So I understand the concern, but my rebuttal to that would be the longer you wait, the more you risk that price tag getting even higher than what it is. Dove is up next. He wants to talk about the coaching staff.
For you, it's Dove. I just finished listening to your podcast about the Jets' expectations coming into next year. And I listened to PG's voice message, and while I don't agree with him that 9.5 wins should be the over-under, I do understand what he's coming from. I feel like the coaching staff should make the team much more competitive. You know, we've seen Mike Tomlin do with much less. Robert Quinn came in with the Commanders with a less talented roster. Right, he had Jordan Daniels, but he had a way less talented roster than the Jets. And something I feel like most coaches win in their first year. I'm not saying make the playoffs, but I would not be happy with anything under 8 wins. We should be getting 8+ wins. And if we don't, then this is not the right coaching staff. I think that's how we should be approaching this. I'm tired of, rebuild and another year. No, we have to decide. If it's an all-star coaching staff, we keep them. If they're not, we move on. And one more thing, I have a question about how the Lions, when they...
The Lions part of this got cut off, but I would like the Jets to win 8 games. I'm predicting them to win 7. I think you're looking at between 6 and 8. 6 on the low end, 8 on the high end. But I don't think they're going to one and done Aaron Glenn almost under any circumstance. This isn't like a team that has these high, like, it's not like he was given a roster that, they're expected to win 14 games and they go out and win 6. And you go, okay, yeah, you fire them. If they win 7 games, it's pretty much on par with the expectation. Vegas has the over-under for the Jets at 5.5 this year. If they go 7-10, I'm not firing the coach. It depends on the context of these games too. Like, are they 7-10 and feisty, or are they 7-10 and getting blown out 10 times during the year? They don't have a definitive quarterback on the roster. If Justin Fields isn't the guy and just plays the way that he has for most of his career, are we pulling the plug on Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn? And that's the thing. Like, Glenn was here before Muji, so are you one and doneing the GM too? I just, that's not something that I can get on board with. I can't. Max from New Jersey wants to talk some Justin Fields.
This is Max calling in from Holden, New Jersey, and let's talk about some Justin Fields. So I'm very excited about Justin Fields in this offense. I feel like Justin Fields could have a good season, but if Justin Fields wants to be successful in the New York Jets, we need to run a Ravens-style offense. I saw a podcast like Reber saying Lamar Jackson is the best rushing quarterback in the NFL. In time, Justin Fields can be the second best. So we need to run a Ravens-style offense with Lamar. We need to have a lot of RPOs, play action, and on the 4th downs, I think we should go for the tush push. I understand, you may disagree with me, the tush push isn't really a successful play. Only the Eagles can run it because, Jalen Hurts can squat 600 pounds. I'm not saying we need to run the tush push successfully every time, but at least, I think the Jets should at least try to rush the tush push. We go, if we're like 30 inches or 14 inches, we go for the tush push with Justin Fields. Maybe it could work out, but I want Justin Fields to be successful with the New York Jets. We need to run a Ravens-style offense. What's your thoughts on this and go Jets?
So I think I'm not going to say it's a 1-for-1 blueprint for what the Ravens are doing, but I do think the point that Max is trying to make here is that style and offense to the strengths of this team. The Ravens offense, their pass offense is heavily focused on using the tight end. I don't think that's what the Jets are going to do. I think it's going to be heavy on Justin Fields, from Justin Fields to Garrett Wilson, but I don't think it's going to be this, massive tight end heavy offense. I do think they're going to run the ball significantly more. So I guess in that instance, you're right. But I don't want to see Justin Fields running the ball 15 times a game. I think he, pick your spots. Maybe some weeks he gets into double digits, but like 150, between 130, 150 rushing attempts on the year for him. and I'd like to see him throw the ball 25 to 30 times a game. Not saying every single week, but I don't want it to feel like they're babying him and he's throwing the ball 16 times a week and running the ball 15 plus times a week. I just don't think that's the recipe for success on this team. On fourth and short or third and short, I think the quarterback sneak is a very, very wise thing for them to run. I think Justin Fields is very successful with it. He has the body style for it. I think it's a no-brainer. They didn't do it with Rodgers. They didn't do it with Zach Wilson. I think it's time to bring it back into the mix. Let's do Peter from Hudson Valley, who wants to get in on the roster talk.
Hey, Matt. It's Peter calling in on this Monday evening, as promised, to start to break down who I think will make the Jets roster in 3 segments. This week, we'll talk about the offense. I did obviously look at the roster in its entirety to get an idea of who will be there on defense and be there on special teams, the practice squad. So don't be surprised if there's certain names left off this, but they'll probably be elsewhere as we break this down in 3 parts. So quarterback, of course, I have the Jets keeping Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor. Spoiler alert, there will be a quarterback on the practice squad. We saw Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, and I expect that Donovan Edwards will be kept on the roster because to release him at the end of training camp and try and designate him back to the practice squad probably would be hard, like last year with Leonard Taylor, Eric Watts, Braden McGregor. So I think Edwards will be kept. I think we have, obviously, for wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Malachi Corley, Johnson and Reynolds, and Smith, Aaron Smith. Spoiler, Xavier Gibson, not going to make it, maybe the practice one. At tight end, Taylor, once he finally gets signed, hopefully that gets done soon. Rucker and Smart. The offense, obviously, Fashanu, Simpson, Tippman, Vera Tucker, and Membu. A core of 4, I think Mitchell, Myers, and Warren will be the backups there.
Okay.
So that's who I believe will be on the offensive side. I think that added up to about 24 guys, if I remember correctly. So not certain names obviously are missing, like Irv Charles and stuff like that, but because they mostly play special teams, I'm going to put them on the specialist call when I talk about that part of things.
Fair.
So that's it for this week as far as who I think is going to make the roster on the offensive side. Obviously, barring any changes, any free agent additions, they decide to after the fact. But if you have any comments on it or questions, let me know. And as always, go Jets.
The only thing that jumps out, I think you're pretty much spot on, Peter. Thank you, and thanks for the call as always. The one thing that I might question is if they would keep both Mitchell and Warren. I think they're gonna keep one of the two. And because you brought in Chuck Okorafor as a guy who's obviously gonna be here and having some depth. Myers, I also like, and maybe this is just, being a little biased, but Gus Hartwig, a UDFA, I think has a shot to make it. I would even consider keeping Xavier Newman over one of Mitchell or Warren. I just think you pick one of the two. That'd be my thought. It's tough. It's narrowing a roster down to just 53 guys is tough, but I think you did a pretty good job. The one thing that I question from your list is if both Carter Warren and Max Mitchell make it. And if not, who they could add either a different offensive lineman or maybe they're saving a roster spot for, a special team ace or someone on the defense. Let's go to Travis out from Ohio. Travis.
Hey, Matt.
Hey,
Travis from Ohio. Hey, buddy. Long time no talk. I'm sorry. I've been in depression because of last 2 decades, years, whatever. Anyway, couple things. Getting close to that milestone 300 episode.
Getting close.
Going strong. I've been there since day one news.
Appreciate you.
Anyway, hope all the wedding planning is going well. Hint, just okay everything that she wants. And just stand by her for all that And then when it comes to song list at the reception, that's when you make your play.
I like this plan.
And this is coming from a divorced guy, single parent, whatever. Not like I know what I'm talking about, but that's when you make your move. That's when you get what you want into the wedding. Anywho, funeral, wedding, whatever. Love it, buddy. Hope it all goes well. And
thank you, man.
Glad to see all the people attending. Anywho, I honestly was crushed by the past 2 years. When I legit came on here and said and professed that we had the most talented roster I ever saw the Jets have. And you know how much I went to bat for Joe Douglas and thought he was the best GM we had since Parcells. And it failed completely at best. And I might have been half right, kinda. But again, I'm a broken fan, so it was horrible. Anyway, that said, we got like 30-some million in cap space. We should extend Sauce and Garrett. Like, I don't want to really see us plug holes or anything else. Like, let the young guys play.
Okay.
Like, let them fail, sink or swim, fail or whatever, or step up. That'd be even better. So, anyway, let's let our coaches actually develop both sides of the ball. And this is a young roster, so like I said, let them sink or swim. Anyway, you always swim. You're the man. I love you. I'm sorry I haven't called in, but, you know, it hurts. It hurts, buddy.
Travis, I appreciate you. Good to hear from you always. I love the advice on the wedding planning. We have the next thing on the list is we have our tasting at the venue next month, which I'm excited for. And one of the things and to be totally fair or transparent, we've agreed on pretty much everything. Thankfully, Taylor and I, through this process, it hasn't been like butting heads on, like, I don't know, it's just not worth it. We're very similar personality wise, so we agree on a lot of things. But on the tasting side, the one thing that I was like, this is something that I want and makes sense in a second. I was like, I gotta have for the cocktail hour that we have to have a mashed potato bar. That is one of my favorite things. One of my college friends at their wedding, they had one. It's like, you go up, you pick, you want sweet potato, you want just regular mashed potato, you want to put bacon, you want scallions, you want cheese, gravy, whatever you want on it. I'm like, that is right up my alley. So I want to make sure that we have that for the cocktail hour. The music, we both wanted a DJ. And if you're a band person, like, I've been to plenty of weddings that I come from an Irish Catholic family. My dad is one of 9. He's the second youngest. All my cousins are like 10 to 15 years older than me. So I've been to tons and tons and tons of weddings. And had both DJ and band. My preference is DJ, but I totally understand if you get a good wedding band, that's also a really fun time. But my start of my career, I started in radio. So I was like, I think I have a pretty good handle on what the music should be vibe wise. So that part is good. And I'm looking forward to continuing to plan this out over the next few months. On the Jet side, I like your point about letting the young guys sink or swim. I think this year should be used for evaluation, right? And it's not, and you kind of stopped yourself, Travis. You're like, fail. It doesn't have to be, but you learn about what these young guys have. And you go, okay, this guy's a building block piece. This guy's a building block piece. That guy, he didn't really have it. We can move on and maybe either draft someone or find a veteran to plug in there. You're essentially learning about your team in year one. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Let's close out with PG from Long Island.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. Thank you for taking the call. I want to talk a little bit about the defense. I saw Steve Wilkes' interview or press conference last week. Was very impressed. a reporter asked him, how is it stepping back from football for a year? And he didn't step back. He actually volunteered at a college. And then on Mondays, or at least Mondays, he would watch film in the NFL, taking notes on what defense was doing and just pretty much just learning some more. And, contrast that with Hackett, who reportedly didn't even watch much film during the season. And it's just kind of another example of how, in my opinion, we've really upgraded the entire coaching staff.
Agree.
But the defense, we don't know what it's going to look like. Wilkes has a history of zone. Obviously, Glenn loves man-to-man. Wilkes said it's going to be kind of a combination mix and match in the back end, which I think we have the personnel to do that, and depending on the opponent. But both Glenn and Wilkes have a history of blitzing a lot. And I've heard this phrase that, they're using a run blitz. And to be honest, I've never really understood what that looks like. When you're blitzing the quarterback, whether you're coming up the middle with a one back or a safety, or you're coming off the edge with a cornerback, you know where the quarterback's supposed to be. It's going to be in the pocket. That's what you're targeting. With a run blitz, you go up one particular gap, and the play's not at that gap, then it doesn't sound like it could be very effective. So my question, I guess, is: do you have any insight into how just because I don't know how it works doesn't mean it's not a thing. It is a thing. Do you have any idea of how it actually works? And then the other question is, if we do have some problems on stopping the run, if our defensive line is just kind of unknown and unproven, is a run blitz something that, the Jets could use
absolutely
to kind of shore up that the run defense? Anyway, love to get your thoughts on that, Matt O'Leary. And as always, go Jets.
I think there's a lot of ways that they could work in creative blitzing. And what was funny is Steve Wilkes is more of a zone coverage guy, Aaron Glenn more of a man coverage guy. But both have liked to blitz in the past. And I think the Jets have the personnel to do it with the speed that they have at linebacker and safety, honestly. Like Quincy and Jamie and Sherwood should be stellar run blitzing, or just blitzing in general. Michael Carter II, underrated as a blitzer. Looking at the safety room, I would think Cisco and Malachi Moore would make the most sense coming down to the line of scrimmage and making plays there. You could even do a corner blitz. Not that you necessarily want to be blitzing Sauce Gardner, but maybe Brandon Stevens would make sense in that role. Or A.Z. Thomas, who's a good tackler, would make sense. It really depends, right? Like how these guys look in training camp, I feel like, and who's kind of winning what positional battle on the defensive line. But you can give help to a guy like Will McDonald if he's struggling. Have, someone blitzing on that side, or on the interior if, whoever's next to Quinn and they're struggling. Yeah, that's when you send the Mike linebacker up the middle, and try to get additional pressure that way. With Ulbrich and Saleh, they were very stubborn in the senses, we're going to rush 4, we're going to get home with our 4. That's how it's going to work. I don't think you're going to see that same philosophy from these guys, which, as you were kind of saying in the beginning of the call, speaks volumes about the hopeful improvement of the coaching staff. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to another episode of Just Jets. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.